Philip Chisholm. On the evening of October 22, 2013, Diana Chisholm contacted the Danvers Police Department to report that her 14-year-old son, Philip Chisholm, had not returned home from school. Philip, a student at the local high school, had recently moved to Danvers from Tennessee, and his unexplained absence deeply worried his mother, who said he had never shown such behavior before. Understanding the urgency, the Danvers police responded promptly. They shared Philip's photo and physical description, his height and weight, on the department's social media platforms, aiming to raise awareness and gather leads from the public. Additionally, local residents received a reverse 911 alert informing them of Philip's disappearance and providing critical details about his appearance. While Diana Chisholm was reporting her son missing, the parents of Colleen Ritzer were also growing increasingly concerned for their daughter. Colleen Ritzer, a 24-year-old math teacher at Danvers High School, failed to return home from work that day, prompting her parents to grow increasingly concerned. Known for her disciplined nature, Colleen rarely deviated from her routine without informing her family. She was deeply committed to her profession, and her love for her students was evident in everything she did. Meanwhile, Officer Neil Hoodie from the Danvers Police Department was also growing anxious about Philip Chisholm's disappearance and began searching along Old Route 1, north of Danvers. At 12:28 a.m., while scanning the dark, rural, and icy area with minimal lighting, Officer Hoodie spotted a figure walking along a dangerous stretch of road on a bridge that led down to a dimly lit highway. Pulling over, he exited his vehicle and approached. Standing there was a young male wearing shorts, a zip-up hoodie, black socks, and shoes, Philip Chisholm, carrying a backpack slung over one shoulder. As a seasoned officer, Hoodie immediately noticed several concerning details about Philip's appearance and behavior. First, Officer Hovey noted that Philip was walking alone in a dangerous area late at night. Second, despite the cold and wet weather, Philip was dressed in shorts, which immediately raised concern. During their interaction, Philip seemed detached, his gaze drifting past the officer as if he wasn't even there. When asked where he lived, Philip responded that he had no home. Before I continue, I want to remind you that only a small percentage of people who watch my videos are actually subscribed. So if you enjoy my content, consider subscribing. It's free and you can always change your mind later. Now let's move on with the video. To Officer Hovey's surprise, Philip claimed he had been living on the streets for several days. However, his clean and orderly appearance didn't match that story. He didn't look like someone who had been exposed to the elements. Worried for Philip's safety, Officer Hovey decided to frisk him and discovered a piece of plastic in his pocket. He asked Philip to take it out. Philip complied, revealing a driver's license, an insurance card, and a credit card. None of them belonged to him. They were all in the name of Colleen Ritzer. When questioned about the credit card, Philip claimed he had found it at a grocery store, but when asked which one, he faltered and said he didn't know. Back at the station, as Hovey searched Philip's backpack, he uncovered a series of disturbing items: a woman's purse, women's underwear, and, most alarmingly, a box cutter stained with a reddish-brown substance. Recognizing it as blood, the officer questioned Philip about it. What he heard next was chilling. Philip calmly said the blood belonged to the girl. Officer Hovey briefly stepped out of the room to contact the Danvers Police Department. While he was away, another officer remained with Philip and asked where the girl was. Philip calmly replied that she was buried in the woods. Alarmed, the officer asked if there was any chance they could still help her. Philip's chilling response, "No," raised immediate concern. As the officer looked more closely, he noticed reddish-brown stains on the sleeves of Philip's sweatshirt and a ski mask hanging around his neck. Philip's clothing and shoes were collected as evidence. Meanwhile, Officer Steve Belair was dispatched to Danvers High School to search for Colleen Ritzer. Upon arrival, Officer Baldassari began gathering details and waited for access to the school's security camera footage that could prove crucial in tracing Colleen's whereabouts after her last class. As Baldassari coordinated with other officers, he learned that several significant clues had already been uncovered. They found Colleen's bag in a recycling bin, her shoes and clothes near a running trail near the student parking lot, and her personal items in a bush near the path. When the police looked in the recycling bin, they saw what looked like blood. Another cop who searched the school found what looked like blood in the women's bathroom on the second floor, which was close to Colleen's classroom, and made them even more suspicious. Officer Belair, who knew how Philip Chisholm looked from reading about his missing on social media, saw a man on the video at 2:30 p.m. who matched Philip's description. The video showed Philip following Colleen Ritzer out of her classroom and walking down the school hallway. While Officer Belair kept watching the CCTV tape, he saw Colleen Ritzer go into the bathroom on the second floor for women. Philip walked in behind her, but she didn't know what he was up to. A few minutes later, Philip came out of the bathroom dressed differently than when he went in. What was even scarier was that he had a mask on his face, as if he was trying to hide. At 3:16 p.m., Philip left school and went into the visitor parking lot. He went back to the second-floor women's bathroom with a recycling bin and waited a moment. Then he left the bathroom with the bin and pulled it outside the school, out of the camera's view. It's scary to think that Officer Balsar never saw Colleen Ritzer leave the second-floor women's bathroom. When the Denver Police Department found out that Philip Chisholm was safe, they took the teen into custody and brought him to the Denver Police Department to be questioned about the disappearance of Colleen Ritzer. At the same time, the Massachusetts State Police arrived at Denver High School to begin a crime scene investigation and began looking for where the bloody recycling bin had been found. Diana Chisholm went to the police station and was questioned by an officer. During her interview, she talked about her worries about her son Philip's mental health. She said that Philip was prone to snapping because of the stress of her and her husband's recent separation. Diana also said that there was a history of mental health problems in her family. At around 2 a.m., Philip Chisholm and his mother Diana were led into an interrogation room at the Danvers police station. As they walked in, Trooper and Sergeant Philip Tansey met them. Before the official interview started, Philip and his mother talked to each other in private for about 10 minutes. While Trooper Basher and Sergeant Taney were talking to Philip, officers stood on the other side of the wall and quietly fed them information about the CCTV footage. The video showed Philip following Colleen Ritzer into a woman's bathroom on the second floor. Colleen was never seen leaving the bathroom and was later found covered in blood. While Philip Chisholm was being questioned, the Massachusetts State Police Air Wing and Denver's Fire Department used their infrared technology to search the area for any signs of Colleen cadaver. Tracking dogs and their skilled handlers also searched the area. Around Denver's high school, Philip finally told the police that he had knocked Colleen out with a karate chop and then cut her twice with a box cutter. The details of his confession were shattering, and he showed the police on a map where he had dumped Colleen's body in the woods behind the school. Finally, around 3 a.m., a forensic scientist found something disturbing: a toe with pink nail polish sticking out of a small pile of leaves. The forensic scientist called for paramedics right away. The paramedics got there quickly and started digging through the dirt. Their search led them to Colleen Ritz's dead body. Even though the doctor tried hard, it was clear that Colleen had died. Her body was carefully taken to the medical examiner's office for an autopsy. A forensic pathologist named Dr. Anna McDonald found male DNA on Colleen's body. When this DNA was analyzed, it shockingly fit the profile of Philip Chisholm. Dr. McDonald found pascia, or small bleeding areas around Colleen's eyes and mouth, which is a sign of asphyxiation. He also found blood on Philip's box cutter that matched Colleen's DNA, which led him to think that the box cutter was used to violently attack Colleen. When he looked at the body, Dr. McDonald saw multiple wounds on Colleen's neck, showing that she had been slashed many times in the same spot, causing a lot of injuries. The autopsy report said she had at least 16 cuts to her neck. Some of them were fatal, and even the ones that weren't would have been unbearably painful for Colleen. One of the wounds was so deep that it chipped her vertebrae. Based on the evidence, Dr. McDonald concluded that Colleen died due to sharp force injuries, asphyxiation, by strangulation, and injuries to her neck. Made it clear that this wasn't an accident, but a deliberate act meant to hurt Maxime. When news spread around Danvers that Colleen had been killed, everyone was shocked, especially when they learned that Philip Chisholm was the main suspect. It seemed impossible that someone so young could have done something so horrible. In connection with Colleen's murder, Philip Chisholm was charged with aggravated sexual assault and murder. He pleaded not guilty to the charges. This decision caused controversy and raised questions about how young offenders are treated in the criminal justice system. Some people said that Philip's age shouldn't have stopped him from being tried as an adult. Others thought that the seriousness of the crime called for such charges. Colleen Ritz's students were heartbroken when she died. They remembered her as a kind and loving teacher who always went the extra mile to help them do well. It was unbearable to lose such a beloved mentor, and the Danvers community came together to mourn her death and honor Colleen's memory. There were videos with candles and a moment of silence for Colleen before the first World Series game for the Boston Red Sox. An enormous number of people from all walks of life came together to show their sorrow and help her family through this sad time. What on earth made Philip Chisholm attack and kill his beloved teacher Colleen Ritzer? The New York Post said there were rumors that Philip was in love with his teacher and lost it when she turned him down. A cop's source told the Daily Mail that one of the rumors going around was that Philip had a big crush on Colleen. According to the source, Colleen was friendly and easy to get in touch with. This could have led Philip to mistake her friendliness for flirtiness and make advances on her on a local website. Her Philip's classmate wrote in Wicked Local Danvers after Colleen's murder that Philip was antisocial, tired, and out of it. Some students were worried about Philip's behavior, saying that he often showed up drunk, drawn, and uninterested. But no one could have imagined the depths of Philip's darkness. While Philip was waiting for his trial, a judge threw out his confession because he was questioned without an attorney present. Philip's defense lawyers said that Chisholm was detained by police for more than 3 hours, after being arrested at 12:30 a.m. on October 23rd. Additionally, they said that Chisholm was handcuffed for most of that time and wasn't allowed to make a phone call. They also said that Chisholm had repeatedly asked for food but was turned down. The judge wrote a 48-page ruling in which she said, "Was clear that Philip's mother wanted an attorney to be present during her son's questioning, even though Philip waived his rights." The judge concluded that the court could not find beyond a reasonable doubt that he knew, understood, and willingly waived his Miranda rights. Crime scene investigators found cell phones belonging to Philip and Colleen that they got from statements. However, the court said that they would not be allowed as evidence. Despite this setback, other important evidence, such as Philip's pockets full of money and a bloody box cutter, will be allowed to stand trial in December 2015. Philip Chisholm was found guilty of killing Colleen. Assistant District Attorney for Essex County, Kate McDougall, made a strong case that Philip was focused and unwavering in his horrible plan. She said that Philip wasn't crazy, but planned and deliberate in what he did to Colleen. However, Philip's defense attorney, Denise Reagan, had a different view of the case. People like Denise Reagan said that Philip was crazy when he killed the woman. Reagan said that Philip had no other reason for doing what he did. During the trial, the defense called forensic psychiatrist Dr. Anthony Jackson to talk about Philip's behavior after he was arrested. Dr. Jackson said that Philip's behavior got better after he was given an antipsychotic drug. He said that Philip's hallucinations and delusions got better, and he seemed more alert and oriented. This evidence seemed to show that Philip's actions were affected by his mental state at the time of the murder. Another important witness, Dr. Richard Dudley, a psychiatrist who specializes in forensic evaluations, testified for the prosecution. Dr. Dudley said that he had seen Pilley 7 times while he was in jail waiting for his sentencing. At the time of the murder, Philip heard voices and thought there was a ninja nearby. These voices, which were allegedly telling him what to do, played a big role in his decision-making process. Dr. Dudley also said that Philip had been on the schizophrenia spectrum since childhood. He said that while Philip had shown signs of schizophrenia in the past, his condition had gotten much worse before the murder. Schizophrenia is a mental illness that changes how a person thinks, feels, and acts. It is a long-term condition that affects about 1% of the population. People who have schizophrenia may have illusions and hallucinations, confused thinking, and withdrawing from society. They may have trouble telling the difference between what is real and what isn't. This makes it hard for them to go about their daily lives. Dr. Dudley said that Philip had recently said he was sorry for killing Colleen and that he would not have done it if he hadn't heard the voices. However, the prosecution disputed the doctor's statements, saying that Philip was making up or exaggerating his symptoms. They said that Philip's mental illness wasn't a good enough reason for his actions. To make their case to the jury, the prosecution used strong evidence, such as surveillance tapes that showed Philip following Colleen into the bathroom moments before she was killed. These tapes gave important clues about how the crime was planned and carried out. They also showed the jury graphic photos of the crime scene, showing Colleen's horrific injuries, including a box cutter wound to the neck. The judge and jury were allowed to visit Danvers High School, the scene of the crime, to get a better understanding of what happened that terrible day. This gave them the chance to see for themselves where Colleen was attacked and killed. For many, it was a very emotional experience that brought the reality of the situation into stark relief in a last-ditch effort to sway the jury. For Philip's defense, they called his maternal grandpa, Eduardo Barbie, to the stand. Eduardo told the jury that Philip's grandmother had a mental breakdown in the early 1970s and had been treated with electric shock therapy. He also told them that some of his other children had also been treated for mental illness and spent time in psychiatric facilities. A Philip's classmate also said that Philip's behavior had changed a lot in the few days before Colleen was killed. This classmate said that Philip, who used to be lively and outgoing, had become quiet and distant. This sudden change in behavior made Philip's classmates suspicious. Despite Raven's best efforts, the jurors found Philip Chasm guilty of Colleen Ritz's murder and sentenced him to life in prison with the possibility of parole in 40 years. During the sentencing, the judge said that Colleen's death was brutal and senseless. The details of the murder were horrifying and showed how much pain Colleen went through. You might think that Philip's life sentence would be the last time anyone heard of him, but that wasn't the case. In 2004, when he was 25, Philip pleaded guilty to attempted murder, assaults, battery with a dangerous weapon, and kidnapping. These charges were related to an incident in June 2014, when a Massachusetts Department of Youth Services worker said he attacked her in a way similar to how he killed his teacher, Colleen Ritzer. A year ago, the youth services worker said Philip followed her into a bathroom, pinned her against a wall, and tried to choke and hit her with a pencil. This shocking discovery made it even clearer that Philip Chisholm was a dangerous person who didn't care about people's lives. After pleading guilty, Philip got an extra 17 to 20 years in prison on top of the life sentence he already had. In a powerful statement read in court, the surveyor who was attacked by Philip talked about her terrifying experience. In a letter, the youth service worker talked about how scared she was after the attack and how she couldn't leave her room because she thought Philip was waiting for her. Her words reminded us of how terrifying Philip was. Philip Chisholm is now trying to take his case to the highest court in Massachusetts. His lawyer, Michael Schneider, has said that there was no doubt that Philip was the person who killed Colleen. But his insanity argument has been called into question. Michael Schneider says that Philip was wrongly convicted because there wasn't enough proof, and the judge should not have allowed brain scan expert testimony that would have supported Philip's claim of mental illness. Brain scan expert evidence is one of the most important parts of Philip's appeal. Michael Schneider says that these scans would have shown that Philip was mentally ill at the time of the crime if this expert evidence had been taken out. Schneider says the jury didn't fully understand Philip's mental state at the time of the murder. Learning that Philip Chisholm was appealing his sentence made Colleen's family and friends very angry. They told the media how determined they were to make sure he stayed in prison. In jail, Colleen's family and friends were sure that Philip's actions were planned, evil, and beyond doubt after the trial and jury's verdict. They said that the overwhelming evidence left no room for doubt. One of the things that made Colleen's family and friends the most angry was that Philip had never shown any remorse. They were even more sure that Philip could never be forgiven because he didn't show any empathy, because they think he should be resentenced. The idea that he might be qualified for parole is unthinkable to them. Colleen and her family were not given a second chance, and it is unthinkable that they would have to think again about the possibility of shortening this murderous sentence for Colleen's family. They can't even imagine that justice would not be done. They believe that the guilty verdict and the maximum sentence were well-deserved. It is hard for them to believe that the killer would even be considered for a lesser sentence. Colleen Ritzer's murder served as another heartbreaking reminder of the deep loss felt by her community. In the aftermath, teachers across the country experienced heightened fear and anxiety. The realization that a student could target and harm a teacher left many feeling exposed and unsafe in their profession. Her tragic death forced educators, who once believed their environments were secure, to reconsider their safety protocols and take additional measures to protect both themselves and their students. In response, schools throughout the U.S. implemented enhanced security procedures. These included tighter access controls, expanded use of video surveillance, and more frequent lockdown drills. Many schools also brought in trained security personnel and conducted regular emergency preparedness exercises for both students and staff. The aim was to create a safer atmosphere and reduce the risk of similar tragedies in the future. Colleen's death not only prompted security upgrades, but also fostered a greater sense of vigilance and awareness within school communities. Following the tragedy, educators became more attentive to potential warning signs and concerning behaviors in their students. Teachers reported being more cautious in how they interacted with students, while students themselves became more alert to their surroundings and more willing to seek help from school staff when needed. These heightened precautions aim to prevent future incidents of violence and ensure a safer environment for everyone on campus. Colleen's death also sparked serious concerns about teacher safety, particularly when alone with students. In response, many educators expressed fears of being targeted or physically harmed if a student turned aggressive. Schools began offering training to help teachers manage potentially violent situations with composure and to encourage reporting any red flags to the proper authorities. Educators were also given safety guidelines for conducting one-on-one interactions with students. Moving on to the next case. Richard Alfred Kananen. Richard Alfred Kananen, 54 years old, was known for his violent nature, but not in the way most people think. He wasn't someone who lost his temper occasionally. He was a constant, looming threat in the lives of those around him. Back in September 1988, those living in his home referred to him as a monster. Then, that monster suddenly vanished. 15 years later, his wife disappeared too. The two vanishings were clearly connected. But how? Had the abusive husband returned after all those years to finish what he once began? On the morning of September 10, 2003, a 38-year-old woman named Cheryl Bracken sat with officers from the Orlando Police Department. Her face was tense with worry as she prepared to file a report that would trigger an investigation filled with twists and unsettling details. Just the day before, Cheryl learned that her 65-year-old mother, Marilyn Kananens, hadn't shown up for work, something entirely out of character for the always punctual and anxious Marilyn. The last 24 hours had been a whirlwind of concern for Cheryl, and now she was determined to report her mother missing. She sat in Marilyn's living room alongside her brothers, Rick Kananens, 47, and Stacy Kananens, 37. A coffee mug and several Social Security checks lay on the table in front of them. The house was noticeably messier than their mother would ever have allowed. As investigators dug deeper into the case, they uncovered that the family's fear wasn't just about Marilyn's sudden disappearance. It stemmed from a much older, unresolved trauma that had haunted the Kananens family for years. Marilyn's sons believed their long-absent father, Richard, might have been involved in her disappearance. However, police found no evidence of forced entry or any clear signs of foul play at the scene. Marilyn's only close relatives were her 3 children, and it was obvious they had all endured something deeply traumatic in the past. Detectives began to suspect that the key to solving the mystery might lie in that past. Richard Alfred Kananens had been 21 years old when he first met Marilyn Reagan, and the two quickly fell in love. They were a stark contrast. Marilyn was petite and soft-spoken, while Richard was physically imposing, with tattoos of snakes, swords, skulls, and crossbones. He worked at a shipyard and had a hardened, aggressive demeanor. Despite their differences, they got married and started building a life together. Richard, a former convict, earned money through scams and constantly moved around to stay ahead of the law. As they moved from place to place, Richard and Marilyn raised 3 children together. Their firstborn, a son, was named after his father and went by Rick. 8 years later, they welcomed a daughter named Cheryl, followed 2 years later by their youngest, Stacy. In 1979, the Kananens family finally decided to settle down, purchasing a home in Orlando, Florida. Though the children had already endured a chaotic upbringing due to their constant relocation, their challenges didn't end there. Despite living in what seemed like a peaceful and safe neighborhood, the reality inside their home was far from secure. From the very beginning, Richard was both an alcoholic and an abusive presence. His violence wasn't occasional, it was constant. His daily outbursts and intimidation left the children deeply traumatized. To them, he wasn't just their father. He was a terrifying figure they referred to as the monster. Unlike typical childhood fears, their nightmares didn't involve imaginary creatures, but the very real threat of Richard Kananens. He enforced a rigid routine and strict rules that had to be followed without exception, or there would be consequences. The children were forbidden from forming friendships, bringing anyone home, or speaking about anything that happened within the house. Richard controlled every detail of their lives, ensuring they returned immediately after any activity he had personally approved. He also tortured each of his children on a regular basis. Since Rick was the oldest and the only child, he saw his mother abused for 8 years. He also went through his own pain, being abused physically and even being beaten while chained to the doghouse for days. Cheryl had seen physical violence that sometimes led to Mull. He would lock the door behind him and take her to his room. But whatever happened to her as a child was so painful that she couldn't remember what happened behind closed doors. However, she always remembered being beaten. And the next day, when she told her mother Marilyn about what her father was doing to her, Marilyn would tell her to stop lying. As for Stacy, Richard said that she was his only biological child, but that didn't stop him from sexually assaulting her and doing other horrible things to her. During a car ride, Richard told his wife and kids that Stacy was going to sleep with him that night, and he did something unthinkable to her. Stacy thought that Richard's absence was the best 2 weeks of her life, but her happiness didn't last long, because Richard returned with more ideas for how he could hurt his family even more. Marilyn was also abusive to her children, but in a more subtle way. She would lie to her kids about how badly their father hurt them. Maybe she thought that manipulating herself and the kids was the only way to get out of the pain and stay alive. That's why those kids grew up planning to leave the house for good. Richard told Rick to get his own place and not talk to anyone in the family for a year after graduating from Wisconsin. If he didn't, he would be reported for hurting his sisters and sent to jail. Richard was clear that he would not take in a family member who had already left, even for graduation. After that, Rick's visits to his mother's house were rare and usually only happened when he was asked to do jobs or run errands. 2 years later, on Cheryl's 18th birthday, Rick told her, "Oh, happy birthday." That same day, Cheryl moved out, and her relationship with Richard never got better. Only Stacy and Marilyn stayed in the house with Richard, but the misery that Richard caused his family would never go away, even for those who didn't live there anymore. In 1988, Cheryl was 24 and planning a secret wedding. She didn't do this to hide her relationship with Richard. She did it because she was afraid that Richard would kill her and her groom on their wedding day. Even the guests didn't want to go because they were afraid that Richard's threats would come true. But 2 weeks before the wedding, something amazing and surprising happened that would change Cheryl's life and the lives of those around her forever. Richard just vanished again. Around the middle of September 1988, he never came home from work. Rick ran up to Cheryl and told her that Richard was gone. He said it was an early wedding gift and made it sound like she was on her way to a beautiful wedding. Richard's family never tried to find out where he went. They seemed more worried about his possible return than about his safety. No one was called, or a missing person report was made this time. Richard didn't come back after 2 weeks. He didn't come back at all. It was a year of coming out for the family. In the years that followed, Marilyn decided it wasn't too late to finish school and start working. She felt refreshed, and her children saw a different side of their mother. Cheryl was taking care of a lovely family and living the family dream. Stacy got to know a part of herself she hadn't known before. She also got a job as a salesperson at Disney World and was living a happy life. Rick, on the other hand, married a woman 20 years older than her and had a rough marriage. He sometimes felt alone, but got through it. Cheryl, who is now a nurse, moved closer to become a nurse with her 3 kids and husband. Marilyn lived with her father, Reagan, and the 3 of them saw each other often and had a great time as a family. Marilyn was a favorite with her grandchildren, and Rick, who is now divorced, often stopped by to see their mother, Marilyn, or sister Cheryl. No matter how dreamy and happy the days were, there was a constant thump of fear in the family's mind. They slept watching their backs, afraid of what would happen when the monster came back. Years went by, and Richard didn't come back. The Kananens and family began to accept that their fears were irrational and that life had taken a surprising turn that had something for everyone. Of course, there was another sharp turn hidden in its angles that would change the lives of the Kananens and family and Marilyn for good on September 10, 2003. Investigators thought the brothers were too afraid to see the truth because they thought their father had come back to hurt their mother. Richard, who was 54 years old, had disappeared in 1988, and it was unlikely that a 69-year-old man would come back after 15 years just to kidnap Marilyn. But who else was in the circle of suspicion? If Kanan and his family were finally happy, what made Marilyn disappear? Had they made enemies along the way? Investigators looked into Marilyn's life to find secrets and possible grudges against a 65-year-old trainer at her aviation academy. Everyone close to Marilyn, the Kananen family, and Marilyn was looked at closely. In a surprising turn, Marilyn's sisters gave detectives important information that they hadn't had before. Not long after Richard went missing, Marilyn's sisters asked her where he was. Marilyn told him that he was in jail in Florida for a major crime, but Marilyn used to get Richard's social security checks. She told her family that she had them sent to Richard, but her sisters didn't believe her. The whole jail story was believable, and the checks were sent to the rightful owner. But they never said anything to her because they were happy for her. To add to the mystery, Marilyn's sisters told the police that their father, Reagan, had lived with Marilyn, and when he died, she would inherit a lot of money. But Marilyn's sisters thought that the Kananen family was happy with each other by that time. Just like Cheryl Stacy and her partner Susan had moved around her mother's block in April 2002. Rick was able to stay in her apartment because it was big enough. Cheryl lived 2 blocks away, and Stacy and Rick hung out with her. The family celebrated every holiday together, including Easter dinners, birthdays, and even weekly game nights. The family fund lasted for months, from April to September, until Marilyn went missing. However, the police needed direction, and the security check at Marilyn's table and her sister's statement about Marilyn getting money from their father were useful for their investigation. They turned their attention to accounts and finances. Meanwhile, in the days after Marilyn went missing, there was a growing suspicion in the family. Even though all 3 brothers had filed a report, they all believed their father had come back. Cheryl was losing touch with what was going on. At first, she saw Stacy and Rick getting over the loss of their mother a little too soon. In fact, everyone else seemed to be paying attention to something else. Stacy and Rick were taking their mother's things with them. But right around the corner was the first of many hints that would quickly turn the missing person case into a murder investigation. Marilyn gave money to Rick and Stacy, and it went to their bank accounts, something that Cheryl had no idea about. After that, there was a garage sale. Marilyn had a huge collection of Disney collectibles that Stacy and Susan chose to sell. Police Officer Mark Hussey, the police officer who was looking into the case, saw the sale and called Cheryl to see if she knew about it. She didn't, but things were starting to look like Rick was trying to get his account unfrozen and take Marilyn's money. Detective Hussey chose to talk to him for a short time. When Ricky showed up, he convinced Stacy to come with him to talk to the police. First, Stacy and Rick were questioned in separate rooms. Then, Stacy and Ricky were put in the same room for a short time as a trick to get the siblings to have a conversation that could implicate one or both of them. The results weren't completely disappointing either. At one point, Rick was seen holding hands with Stacy. They whispered, and it was hard to tell exactly what they said, though some words were easier to make out than others. Ricky said one of these crazy things to Stacy. He said it was possible that he might end up in the gas chamber in the end. Rick and Stacy were free to go, but they didn't know that someone had put a tracking device on their car. They stopped at a pharmacy and then drove into one of Rick's storage units. They didn't know that the sergeant was closely watching them. He saw them writing something down, taking some medicine, and then connecting the exhaust hose to the car. He quickly got down and grabbed them. The car had sleeping pills and a bottle of NyQuil. There were also 2 letters on the dashboard. One was for Cheryl and the other was for Susan. In a letter to Susan, Stacy wrote that we had something to do with our mother leaving. Rick had told Cheryl that he loved her. Investigators caught Stacy and Rick in the middle of a crime. They had an admission and a letter from Rick in Stacy's car, but they couldn't get anything from Stacy after the suicide attempt or while she was in the hospital. However, Rick was willing to talk and ready to confess, but the police weren't ready for what they were about to hear. Rick admitted to killing both his mother Marilyn and his father Richard. He tasered and suffocated Marilyn because she was about to get $250,000 after her father's death, which he wanted for himself. In 1988, he shot his father while he was sleeping because he didn't like him. He also said where the bodies were found. Richard was buried in Marilyn's backyard, and Marilyn was buried in Stacy and Susan's backyard. Rick was arrested right away after the confession, but investigators didn't have any evidence linking Stacy to either of the crimes. They were sure that Stacy was either an accomplice or the mastermind behind both of the killings. Rick, aka, on May 1st, 2007, Richard Kananen Jr., was to go on trial for killing both of his parents. A few days before the trial, he was offered a plea deal in which he would say that Stacy Kananen was a willing accomplice in the killings, in exchange for 30 years in jail. Rick has always been protective of his sisters, even when he was a child and his parents abused him. But he agreed, and Stacy Kananen was arrested and charged with killing both of his parents. The trial of Stacy Kananen finally started on March 10, 2010, and the drama was nowhere near over. Robin Wilkinson, who was in charge of the prosecution, was known for hitting the target, and Diana Tennis, who was representing Stacy, was sure that the police had charged her without any evidence. The most important testimony came from Rick. He said that Stacy and he planned to kill Marilyn and then went to the movies and had dinner together. Then they all went back to the house and talked like normal. While Rick was talking to his mom, Marilyn, Stacy shocked her with a taser. Marilyn fell to the floor and Rick pulled out a bandana. Then they transported their mother's body. In court, Cheryl said that both of her siblings didn't seem to care that their mother had gone missing and that her sister's behavior was not normal in the days that followed. During those days, everything came down to one piece of evidence that was against Stacy: her suicide letter, especially one line that said she had something to do with their mother leaving. After that, Stacy sat in the witness box and told her side of the story from the start, including the abuse. If she wasn't guilty, why did she write that Stacy had an answer? For Stacy's guilt to be proven, there was only one fact left. Where exactly was Marilyn on the day she died? According to Rick Cannon, the family had dinner together that evening. However, her e-pass toll records told a different story, indicating she was somewhere else entirely during the time in question. In court, opinions were divided. Some believed Stacy was guilty, while others defended her innocence. But the verdict caught many by surprise. Stacy was acquitted, and Rick is set to be released in 2029. Throughout his life, Rick had one lingering fear: becoming like his father. Whether or not he truly did remains unclear, but he certainly changed into something else. After the trial, Cheryl cut off all contact with Stacy. Stacy returned to Florida and remained with Susan. She later authored a book titled Fear of My Father, chronicling the abuse and horrific events her family had endured. What began as a story about one monstrous man evolved into a mystery involving multiple potential culprits. One particularly eerie detail was that Marilyn had buried her husband's body in the backyard, and when she told Stacy about it, she did so with unsettling calm. This raises lingering questions. Did Marilyn and Stacy kill Richard together? Was it Rick and Stacy? Or Rick and Marilyn? Or did Rick act alone? What do you think? Moving on to the next case. Ryan Smith. Ryan Smith was born in 1975 in San Diego, California. From an early age, he had a strong sense of adventure and a deep fascination with exploring different cultures around the globe. His desire to experience the diversity of people through their customs, languages, and traditions ultimately led him to leave his home country. At 27, Ryan set out to immerse himself in the cultures of Eurasia, with a particular interest in the nations that had once been part of the Soviet Union. In 2022, armed with nothing but his backpack and big dreams, Ryan traveled to the distant land of Azerbaijan, one of the former Soviet republics. Bordered by the Caspian Sea and nestled in the Caucasus Mountains, Azerbaijan lies at the intersection of Eastern Europe and Western Asia. For Ryan, this made it the perfect gateway into the world he longed to explore. Ryan settled in Baku, the capital of Azerbaijan, where he immersed himself in the local language and culture. On his blog, he shared stories of working in a carpet market within the city's ancient walled district, an experience that introduced him to one of the region's oldest and most cherished artisanal traditions. The techniques used in carpet making are passed down through generations, though the craft has gradually faded over time. Ryan, a young designer, was captivated by the intricate beauty of the handmade carpets and began to envision a business centered around their production. In December 2005, driven by this idea, he returned to the United States to begin laying the groundwork for his venture. While back home, he met Laura Joy, a young and charming teacher. The two soon got engaged and married. Laura shared Ryan's passion for travel and foreign cultures, and in 2011, the couple traveled together to Georgia, a former Soviet republic that borders Azerbaijan. In the Georgian city of Manulai, Ryan and Laura tied the knot and set out to establish a business focused on producing traditional carpets. In 2014, the couple welcomed their son, Caleb, just as they were beginning to promote their long-envisioned handmade carpet weaving initiative. Ryan's project, rooted in traditional Azerbaijani techniques and craftsmanship, had the potential to sell each rug on the international market for over $1,000. While Laura worked as an English teacher at a local public school, Ryan traveled from village to village across the region, searching for skilled weavers willing to collaborate. To his surprise, he found few artisans still practicing traditional techniques. Several who initially showed interest later backed out for various reasons. Some disagreed with the compensation offered, while others lacked familiarity with Ryan's designs and doubted their ability to meet the brand's standards. In his blog, Ryan wrote that he spent 4 days in the village of Kosalari, where he finally encountered craftsmen who were eager to join the project. Ryan's goal was not only to make a profit or to save the development of an ancient culture, he was also interested in becoming something of a public benefactor, attracting women in rural areas who know ancient weaving techniques to his project, giving them the opportunity to revive the craft that would allow them to support their families. Soon, Ryan and Laura Smith became one of the most respected, and the visiting American considered a city with a population of no more than 20,000 people to be the most expensive place for himself. His wife, Laura, became close to the city with its residents engaged in teaching, made many friends, while Ryan promoting the value of the ancient carpet weaving culture earned respect. Most residents considered the Smith couple kind and honest people to whom they could turn for help. A couple of visiting Americans got so used to the local society, traditions, and culture that in 2012 they applied for citizenship and soon became citizens of the United States and Georgia. It was rumored that the couple planned to build a kindergarten with a playground on their own money. But it was at a time when the couple had already decided that they had finally found a home, realized that the future of their family was promising. A tragedy knocked on their doors, and all their plans collapsed in the most unexpected and nightmarish way. In July 2018, 43-year-old Ryan and 42-year-old Laura planned to take a couple of days off to enjoy a vacation next to little Caleb and get away from the routine. Sabina Talabuba, Laura's friend, said that Laura called her on Wednesday, July 4th, shared her plans to go to the mountains, and warned them that they would be gone for 2 days. The couple chose a small, picturesque place, hidden from the eyes, near the Godori Mountains as their destination. This area is known for its trails, beautiful waterfalls, and stunning gorges, ideal for relaxing walks and picnics in nature. In this secluded corner, instead of being distracted and finding peace of mind, the Smith family experienced their worst nightmare. Ryan and Laura were looking for a local resident who would serve as their guide so that they could not get lost and calmly, without fear, traveled in mountainous places. And the parents were also concerned about the safety of little Caleb. I would like the journey not to be exhausting and uncomfortable for the baby. So they met with a local shepherd, Malchus Cabori, who, although he did not live in this area, but despite the young age of 19, knew the neighborhood well. Because he traveled around them daily and grazed herds of sheep and goats. Malchus was distinguished by a calm character. The locals considered him a good guy. Confident in the positive reviews about Malchus, who knew the area, the Smith family hired him as a guide. It had not been long since their departure to the mountains when the couple found out about Malchus' dark intentions and claims. As it became known later, the group went out on the mountain and, having reached the clearing, set up camp for dinner. They chose a place near one of the many springs in the area to have fresh water, quenching their thirst in the summer heat. Obviously, at some point Ryan paid attention to his guide because he felt that he was not careful enough with the gun, which he always carried with him. There was a heated discussion between the two men, and no one expected Malchus to point a gun at Ryan and shoot him in the head. Then he fired another shot at the man in the back. Laura's terrified screams and the baby's crying drowned out the echoes of gunfire, rumbling in the mountains. But the worst was yet to come. Despite the woman's pleas, Malchus put the muzzle of the gun to Caleb's head and fired at point-blank range. Frightened and unaware of what had just happened in front of her, Laura turned to stone, but when she saw Malchus's cold gaze, she understood his true intentions. Her instinct for self-preservation worked. Laura ran as fast as she could to avoid the fate of her husband and son. But when she reached the edge of the waterfall cliff, she realized that she had no way out, and there was no way for her to escape. The shepherd used a weapon to force the woman to violence, and then allegedly pushed her off a cliff. Laura's body fell on the bank of the waterfall. According to the subsequent investigation, Malchus took Caleb's body and buried it in a secluded place, sending the murder weapon there as well. Then the shepherd returned to the village as if nothing had happened. Laura's friend Sabine began to worry when, after 3 days, Laura did not return from a family trip. Sabine tried to call Ryan or Laura, but she never got an answer. Ryan's entourage was also confused, as it was very unusual for him to be away for so long without contacting anyone. On Friday, July 6th, the Center for Rapid Response in Emergency Situations received a message about the possible disappearance of a Georgian family of American origin in the mountains. The caller was Sabin, who said that the Smith family had been in the mountains for more than 2 days with their little son of 4 years old, and they could not be contacted by phone. A team of 15 rescuers was sent to the gorge to search, where presumably a family was missing. Upon arrival in the designated area, rescuers found Laura's belongings and car. But moving further along the route of the small group, the searchers found a terrible find. A lifeless body lay at the foot of the waterfall. Confused rescuers stepped up rescue efforts and expanded the search area. A human corpse was found about 800 meters from the waterfall. The humidity and heat inherent in the season accelerated the decomposition of the body. So the initial report of the authorities was that the victims showed no signs of violence. In accordance with the Criminal Code of Georgia, an investigation was launched, but nothing was known about the couple's child yet. It took another 3 days when the fate of the defenseless baby became clear. Investigators managed to find out that Malchus was the last person with whom the family communicated. A 19-year-old shepherd was detained and told during interrogation that he knew where Caleb was. For days after the Smith family went to the mountains, Malchus led investigators to the place where he buried Caleb, as well as the weapon. The next day, the Georgian police released a statement saying that a young shepherd, Malchus Kaburi, had been taken into custody and he was accused of murdering the Smith family. The news of the murder of a married couple and their son shocked Georgia, especially Manuli and the community of weavers. The American consulate also expressed its alarm over this crime. In fact, the FBI team participated in the investigation together with the Georgian authorities and cooperated in the search and processing of evidence. On July 11th, the Tbilisi Municipal Court decided to place Malchus, who pleaded not guilty to the charges, under arrest. The conductor claimed that the real killers of the family were 2 foreigners who arrived in a black car. Allegedly, these people killed the Smith family, threatened to kill him and his family if he reported to the police, and left Malchus alive so that suspicion of a triple murder fell on the shepherd. Violence against Laura was rejected by Malchus' lawyer, because according to the guy, he was not capable of such a thing, since he was a virgin. On July 12th, family, friends, and activists of public organizations gathered in front of Ryan's house in Marnoli with toys, flowers, and lit candles to express condolences and remember the victims. The next day, Malchus' lawyer confirmed the innocence of the accused. He continued to claim that the crime was committed by 2 foreigners, and that the psychological pressure exerted on his client forced Malchus to initially plead guilty. But evidence against Malchus began to appear one after another. The most convincing evidence of Malchus' guilt was the autopsy report of the victims. It was found that Ryan's body had 2 gunshot wounds, one in the head and one in the back. Caleb was shot in the head at point-blank range. In Laura's case, violence against her was proven and DNA tests confirmed that the biological material found in her body and on her underwear belonged to Malchus. The DNA of Ryan and the defendant were also found on the murder weapon. In addition, a technical examination conducted by the FBI on the phones of the victims and their alleged killer showed that there were photos of Laura's lifeless body at the waterfall in the memory of Malchus' phone. The shepherd even showed them to several local acquaintances, to whom he said that he had accidentally stumbled upon a corpse while walking through these places. Experts found in the search history in the phone that a few days before this incident, Malchus had visited various sites of an intimate nature. All this led investigators to the conclusion that the motive of the crime was the young man's interest in Laura, and that his actions were deliberate from the very moment when the Smith family contacted Malchus to take them to the waterfall. After the release of the autopsy results, Malchus' lawyer, David, resigned, saying that for reasons of principle, he could not defend the shepherd. David was replaced by another lawyer, who from that moment led the case. He insisted on the client's innocence and filed a motion to withdraw Malchus' previous confession. The shepherd's mother, Mariana, supported her son and agreed with the lawyer that the police may have forced the guy to confess to the crime under threat of imprisonment. Relatives of the suspect claimed that because of a high-profile crime, the authorities accused Malchus in order to close the case. However, on November 9, 2018, Malchus was charged with the murder of 3 members of the Smith family. He was also charged with additional charges of violence against Laura. The psychological examination conducted on the young shepherd showed that he is sane, healthy, and ready for trial. The term of pretrial detention expired on April 9, 2019, but the prosecutor said that they had strong evidence of Malchus's guilt and that he would be punished for such a terrible crime. A meeting of 12 members of the court on March 25, 2019, unanimously ruled that Malchus was guilty of premeditated murder with extreme cruelty of more than 2 people. He committed premeditated murder in order to conceal another crime, namely intimate assault. On March 27, 2019, the judge of the Gorey District announced the decision to sentence to life imprisonment. While the relatives of the criminal protested against the life sentence, which they considered unfair, the sentence became a relief for friends and relatives of the Smith family, and defense lawyers announced that they would appeal the verdict to the appellate instances in connection with alleged procedural violations. The U.S. consul in Georgia said that the verdict provided justice for the Smith family, adding that the evidence left no doubt about Malchus's guilt. Since Ryan and Laura Smith arrived in Georgia, they earned the love and respect of the people of Manuli. Their brutal murder sent shockwaves through the community they had come to call home. Ryan's community-based project not only breathed new life into a fading tradition, but also became a vital source of income and stability for many local women. Their tragic deaths left dozens of these women devastated, casting a shadow of grief and uncertainty over their dreams of building a sustainable future. In the aftermath of the tragedy, foreign investors stepped in to revive the initiative, committed to preserving Ryan's vision and providing new opportunities for local artisans. Ryan and Laura had left behind their Western lives in search of cultural richness and connection. Though welcomed warmly by the people of Manuli, their journey tragically intersected with a dark presence, a man who hid his true nature behind the innocent facade of a kind shepherd. Moving on to the next case. In this video, we delve into a profoundly tragic story unfolding in what should have been a slice of paradise. A simple beach outing on October 21, 2018, turned into every family's worst nightmare. 24-year-old Toya Cordingley set out with her dog, Indy, to walk along the secluded sands of Wangetti Beach, just 38 kilometers from her hometown of Cairns. That afternoon, she vanished without a trace. When evening came and she still hadn't returned, loved ones launched a search at first light. Their hopes were shattered when they discovered Toya's lifeless body. The tight-knit community of Cairns was left reeling, haunted by the same questions. Why was Toya targeted? Who could commit such a crime? And how did a day in paradise end in such horror? The story of Toya Cordingley is both heartbreaking and deeply unsettling. While Australia may seem distant to many, the emotional weight of this case feels far too close for comfort. Toya Jade Cordingley was born on June 14, 1994, in Cairns, Queensland, a coastal city in northeastern Australia. She was the only child of Troy and Vanessa, and for a time, their small family led a happy life, until things changed. Toya's parents separated when she was still very young. Despite their love for her, their marriage couldn't withstand its challenges. Vanessa eventually married Darren Gardner, and together they had 2 more children, Jack and Lena. Troy later married a woman named Mary. Divorce can often be hard on children, but Toya adapted remarkably well. She embraced life between 2 households and was known for her cheerful nature and the warmth she shared with her step-siblings. Everyone who knew her admired her bright spirit and resilience. According to those who knew her best, Toya was spirited, adventurous, and full of love. She had a warm, open-hearted personality and a deep sense of curiosity, always eager to embrace new experiences. Toya had a special fondness for fairies and all things whimsical, which reflected in her distinctive, expressive style. She often changed her hair color, rocking vibrant shades like pink, purple, and fire engine red. By October 2018, her hair was a striking icy blonde. Toya came from a family that embraced individuality. Like many in the Cordingley Gardner household, she wasn't afraid to express herself through bold fashion, unique hairstyles, and meaningful tattoos. Their outward appearance was simply an extension of their creative, non-conforming spirit. One of Toya's greatest passions was animals. Her love for them led her to work at the Paws and Claws Refuge and Boarding Center in Port Douglas, where she cared for dogs with genuine dedication. In what would be her final social media post in October 2018, she shared a powerful message. No matter how talented, rich, or smart you are, how you treat animals tells me everything I need to know about you. This truly highlights Toya's deep love for animals, something that defined who she was. As you said, Paws and Claws was more than just a workplace. It was a place where she shined. Counselor Michael Kerr described Toya as kind-hearted, hard-working, and deeply devoted. He recalled how she had a natural gift for calming even the most aggressive dogs within minutes, an ability that left a lasting impression on those around her. Later, Toya began working at a store called Whole Life in Ulville, near Cairns. Even with her new job, her love for animals never faded. She continued to volunteer and kept many pets of her own. Toya was also in a committed relationship with a man named Marco, whom she had been dating for 2 years. Their bond was rooted in shared passions, especially their love for dogs, and similar dreams for the future. Her family was thrilled to see her so genuinely happy. Together, Toya and Marco cared for their beloved dog Indy, a gentle giant who was part German Shepherd, Mastiff, and Great Dane. When the couple moved in together with their animals, life seemed full of love, peace, and promise. But everything changed in the most heartbreaking way on October 21st, 2018, an ordinary day that took a devastating turn for the Cordingley family. That morning began like any other for Toya. One of her plans was to take her dog, Indy, for a walk along Wanjetty Beach, located about 38 kilometers north of Cairns, roughly halfway between Cairns and Port Douglas. Earlier in the day, Toya completed her shift at Whole Life Pharmacy, where she had been offering customers samples of, believe it or not, camel's milk. Yes, camel's milk. Life has a way of surprising you with the most unexpected details. After work, she stopped by Rusty's Market near the waterfront to pick up groceries for dinner. CCTV footage captured her between 12 and 1 p.m., holding a colorful basket and wearing a light-colored crochet top, her hair tied up. After returning home, Toya told Marco about her plan to head to the beach with Indy. At around 2:30 p.m., she left in her blue 2009 Mitsubishi Lancer and drove to Wanjetty Beach. She parked near the southern entrance and is believed to have started her walk shortly after. Wanjetty Beach is a secluded stretch with around 4 kilometers of sand, no facilities aside from a small parking area and the nearby highway. It's a hidden local gem, quiet, peaceful, and off the beaten path. Tragically, Toya never made it home for that dinner. As the day turned into night, Marco grew increasingly anxious. Toya wasn't answering her phone, and she still hadn't returned home. By 9 p.m., his concern deepened, prompting him to call Toya's stepbrother, Jack, to ask if she was with him. When Jack realized she hadn't come by, he instantly felt alarmed. He rushed to his mother Vanessa's room, where she was preparing for bed. Vanessa immediately sensed something was wrong the moment she saw Jack's worried face. When he told her that Toya hadn't been seen or heard from since earlier that afternoon, her heart sank. They wasted no time. Police were contacted, and by 10:50 p.m., 24-year-old Toya was officially reported missing. Vanessa also reached out to Troy, her ex-husband and Toya's father, to share the terrible news. From that moment on, the entire family, Troy, Vanessa, Toya's friends, and loved ones, began a desperate search, scouring the neighborhood and spreading the word across social media in hopes of finding her. Police advised the family to wait until morning to begin the search, explaining that Wangetti Beach was far too dangerous to navigate at night, completely dark, with shifting tides that could pose serious risks. While the reasoning made sense, Toya's family was desperate. Waiting felt unbearable, but with limited options and no success in the dark, they ultimately agreed to resume the search at first light. On the morning of October 22nd, Toya's family arrived at Wangetti Beach armed with flashlights, determined to find any clue they could. Amid their fear and anxiety, they spotted something that sparked a glimmer of hope: Toya's car. It was still parked near the beach entrance, just as it had been the day before. Though she was nowhere in sight, the fact that her car remained gave them a small sense of relief. It meant she likely hadn't left the beach area, and the search could now begin in earnest. However, Toya was still nowhere to be found when the group got to the shore. The tide was still high. She did find something or someone, though. As Vanessa looked away, her attention went to a bush. She thought she felt something move behind it. As she got closer, she saw Toya's dog Indy tied so tightly to a tree that it couldn't sit down. It is clear that Toya did not do this. Toya deeply cared about her pet's well-being and would never put anything else ahead of it, so she could not have made the leash so painfully tight. Indy was freed when Troy and Vanessa cut the leash. Vanessa then went to her car to charge her phone, which had lost its charge. This was probably a sign from God, because as the sun came up and the water started to rise, Troy found out something horrible that no parent should ever have to see. Troy saw something sticking out of the sand as the tide slowly went out. He became more aware of what he was seeing as he got closer. It looked like a foot. The sad news is that Toya's father found her body buried in a shallow grave, about 800 meters from where she had left her car at 7:45 a.m. It will always be hard for Troy to forget seeing his only child in such a scary state. Toya had taken off her clothes and was badly hurt, probably with a knife. Vanessa's brother Jack told her that her daughter had been found and had tragically died. She was shocked, stunned, and then filled with pure horror and sadness. It was so sad that her 24-year-old daughter, who loved life, had been taken away from her that she couldn't help but cry. Vanessa couldn't even see her daughter Toya while she was being taken away from the beach because her injuries were so bad. This is so scary for a parent to go through. Troy and Vanessa knew that things would change in their lives. There were also things that the Queensland police had to worry about. The main one was who attacked Toya. Do you know who it was, or did it happen by chance? The people of Cairns were shocked when Toya died, because she had no friends and was the nicest person anyone knew. They were afraid that the person who killed her was still out there, and no one knew who they were. Wangetti Beach was lovely, but it wasn't safe for women to go there. There was a bad story about this sandy beach that made it dangerous. Look, there were times when girls, and even young women, like Megan, Toya's best friend, went to the beach for a fun vacation and saw guys watching them from behind bushes. Men would take off their clothes and do inappropriate things in front of the girls, making some of the situations very rude and uncomfortable for them. Girls and women had no choice but to leave the scene of the crime, because they were clearly uncomfortable and scared. Being out in the middle of nowhere with trees, shrubs, and a highway all around it, Wangetti Beach became a popular spot for thieves and bad people. It was bad enough that Toya was at this beach with her friends, but the story really gets stronger when you think about how she had been there all by herself that day, except for her dog. The question then was, did this happen to Toya? Did one of these dangerous people grab her and do something horrible? While detectives looked for signs that could help the Cordingley family find answers, Toya's funeral took place on November 2nd, 2018, and hundreds of people came to say their last goodbyes to a bright young woman whose life was tragically and unexpectedly cut short. It broke my heart that Toya's boyfriend Marco went to the funeral with Indy, who was with Toya, on the terrible day she was attacked. People joke a lot about what if dogs could talk, but seriously, now is the time when a dog should be able to speak up. Indy probably saw the whole attack, but the dog will never forget what it saw, because it is stored in its thoughts. Toya was buried with flowers that had just been picked, surrounded by the people who had been so affected by her death. At the same time, police taped off the beach and called in divers and K9 units to look for any signs of someone else who might have killed Toya. The cops looked at everything: DNA tests, surveillance footage, forensics, and reports from witnesses. They even looked at what was going on with cell towers on the day and time that Toya was at the beach. At the time of the crime, The police also had clear suspects, such as Toya's boyfriend, Marco, and her stepdad, Darren. They were quickly ruled out, though, because they all had good excuses, and it didn't make sense that any of them could hurt Toya. On top of that, the question of why Indy wasn't hurt was another very confusing part of the case. Unfortunately, when bad people do horrible things, they don't always leave pets alone. But the fact that Indy lived led police to think that the attacker might have been someone that both Toya and Indy knew. This could explain why the dog didn't attack when Toya was grabbed by her attacker. But Indy was naturally a good dog, and that was quickly found out. Indy was friendly with strangers, even though the dog's size would make most people run away. So the idea that she would be ready to tear down Toya's attacker doesn't seem very likely. Anyway, the investigation was very big, and people who lived near the crime scene were offered and encouraged to give their DNA so that the police could narrow down their list of suspects. Researchers also looked at cars going along the Captain Cook Highway. Finally, after 6 months of going through all the footage and cell tower information, they had a suspect. This was based on dashcam footage, geolocation, and a strange car that was seen swerving down the highway that looked out over the beach on the day Toya went missing. The cops found two very shocking things when they ran the plates. The car wasn't listed in the area where it was seen, so the person could have just been visiting Wangetti Beach. That person who owned the car left Australia on the day Toya went missing and flew to India. That was the second fact that was more worrying. This scared the police because it meant they would have to look for the criminal across continents. But who was the man, and what did he have to do with Toya? The police finally found their main suspect and told everyone that he was an Indian man called Rajwinder Singh, 34 years old. An old man moved from India to Queensland many years ago. He was now working as a nurse for older people in a hospital about 90 kilometers south of Cairns. When the police went to the hospital where Rajwinder worked, his co-workers noticed how he had been acting strangely and shutting down a few weeks before October 21st. At the time, Rajwinder seemed to be depressed and preferred to spend most of his time alone. He didn't hang out with his friends outside of work and never really went out. At first, this didn't sound scary though. There are times when people just want to be alone. The cops then went to Rajwinder's house, which was their next planned stop. Of course, they didn't find him there. Instead, they found his wife, 3 kids, and a baby. Rajwinder's wife said that he had left Queensland on October 21st and was on his way to Sydney. He spent the night with his sister there before taking a plane to India. The agents were even more suspicious because Rajwinder was moving around and acting quickly, but there was more. Police talked to witnesses who said Rajwinder's face, neck, and even hands were covered in bite and scratch marks, which is very scary. Australian investigators knew they had to work with Indian police to find Rajwinder and bring him back to Australia to face the law. This was because the wounds he had probably got from Toya, or at least that's what detectives thought at the time. It wasn't going to be easy to find this man, though. From that point on, Toya's family had to wait for a long time, which was annoying but necessary. Extradition processes can take a long time to finish because 2 countries have to agree on what evidence to use to catch a criminal. It could be a court case all by itself, and we all know that many court cases last for years before they are over. In spite of the fact that Australian police knew Rajwinder was in India, things were not going to go smoothly after checking with Indian agents. In the form of DNA found at the crime scene, the Australian government wanted to present strong proof against Rajwinder. They also didn't want to scare Rajwinder away because he seemed to like running away when things didn't go his way. For Australian police, the process of making an extradition brief took almost 2.5 years. Toya's family was getting impatient with the slow pace of the law because they wanted justice for their daughter, who may have been a victim of Rajwinder without knowing it. But after the report was sent, not much happened. That meant that Indian police still had to find Rajwinder, which wasn't easy. The Australian government even offered a huge $1 million prize for information that led to Rajwinder's arrest. Thank goodness the money promise worked, and less than a month later, cops got a big tip that led them to Rajwinder. The person who gave the tip said that Rajwinder had joined a religious group, grown a long beard, worn a cap, and lost a lot of weight. From what we can tell, Rajwinder was trying to fit in with the crowd. It's so frustrating that he knew he was wanted. Additionally, the person also provided police with important clues that helped them catch and arrest Rajwinder. The police knew this was their only chance. because Rajwinder had to go to New Delhi in a few days for a doctor's appointment. Finally, on November 25, 2022, for years after Toya went missing and later died, Rajwinder Singh, who was 38 years old, was caught in New Delhi and put in jail while he waited to be extradited. It was a surprise when Rajwinder quickly admitted to the crime in an Indian court. Rajwinder gave an unclear but scary answer when asked about the reason. Rajwinder says that he and his wife had a heated fight on October 21st and that he left for Kananens to calm down. He had a kitchen knife with him, which was strange. When he got to Wanjeti Beach, he sat down on the sand, cut up some fruit, and enjoyed the peace and quiet. That's when he heard a dog barking at him. Indy, who was with Toya, was calling. Rajwinder was very angry about the dog's constant barking, so he got into another fight, this time with Toya. During the fight, Rajwinder, who was very angry, pulled out the knife and attacked Toya very violently and quickly. Because Rajwinder was hurt, some people think that Toya fought for her life. She tried to fight Rajwinder, but he beat her, and Toya later died. The horrifying thing was that only Toya, Rajwinder, and Indy saw what happened. After burying Toya's body in a shallow hole, Rajwinder ran away and tied Indy to a tree. It's hard to believe that Toya died at the hands of a stranger. There she was, enjoying a walk on the beach with her beloved dog when she ran into an unstable Rajwinder. He attacked Toya viciously and killed her over what I don't even know what the problem was. Dogs bark because that's what they do. That's a perfectly normal response. There was no reason at all why Toya died. The Delhi court agreed to extradite Rajwinder Singh on January 24, 2023. On February 28th, he flew from Delhi Airport to Melbourne Airport to face charges for killing 24-year-old Toya Cordingley. In the end, he was charged with murder in March 2023. You might have thought this was it. The case of Rajwinder was not even close to being done. A pretrial hearing took place on May 1, 2024, which started a whole new set of problems. In short, the court was shown proof that Toya was having an affair with a doctor named Tyson Franklin, whom she met a few weeks before she died. The defense also showed a bunch of text messages that Tyson and Toya sent to each other in court. In the texts, Toya told Tyson that Marco was angry at the world and that those feelings were projected on her. Tyson even went in front of the judge and said that he and Toya got along. Tyson also admitted that he texted Toya up until the day she died, and that she told him that she was thinking about moving to a new place by herself. Investigators questioned Tyson about Toya's disappearance, but he easily left out the part about him and Toya secretly seeing each other. However, during a cross-examination in court, he admitted that they were seeing each other. It is not clear if Toya was seeing someone other than Marco, her boyfriend of 2 years, or if this is just a trick by the defense to change the focus of the case. Even though Tyson and Toya were friends with each other, I couldn't find any solid evidence that they were dating. It seems like Tyson wasn't part of Toya's plans for the future, like moving out on her own. This makes me think that they weren't. She made it clear that all she wanted was to be away from Marco for a while. No matter what, this new information has changed how some people feel about Toya's case. A lot of people still think that Rajwinder Singh killed Toya because he's leaving the country after the death of Toya was very suspicious since his wife had just given birth to their first child. He had suffered some strange injuries. People saw his car in the area when Toya went missing. He also admitted to committing the act, though he later changed his mind. Besides that, he tried to change how he looked to fit in with the crowd, which is also very shady. But some people think that Rajwinder wasn't the one who attacked Toya. Someone close to her was. This point of view blames either Marco or Tyson. Some people think Marco may have killed Toya because he found out about Tyson's relationship, but there is no proof that Toya and Tyson were dating. It was also quickly decided that Marco wasn't a suspect and Tyson didn't seem to dislike Toya at all. That means Tyson also can't be put at the crime scene. So many things about this case are unknown, and we will have to wait for the hearing to find out what comes next. As of the most current news, Rajwinder's trial for killing Toya has been pushed back to February 2025. This is because Rajwinder's lawyer Angus Edwards asked for the delay at the pre-trial hearing on July 19, 2024. The hearing was put off because Rajwinder's defense team needed more time to look over a lot of evidence in order to properly explain his role in Toya's death. People in the Cordingley family finally believe that Toya will get what's coming to her. The Cordingley family has been waiting for 6 years for news about Toya's case. The extradition process and the eventual extradition of Rajwinder Singh, the man suspected of killing Toya, has taken a significant emotional toll on her family. Alongside their grief, they've had to endure harsh criticism from some within their own community. The slow progress of justice has left them feeling disillusioned with the Australian legal system. Toya's mother, Vanessa, has expressed how deeply hurtful it's been to face judgment from people in their neighborhood, particularly because of the family's non-traditional lifestyle. It's heartbreaking that, while mourning an unimaginable loss, they've also had to defend simply being themselves. We often hear messages of equality and acceptance echoed around the world, yet the reality is often very different. Despite the speeches and campaigns promoting inclusivity, society still tends to embrace only those who fit a familiar mold. That's the uncomfortable truth. Toya's family has been unfairly targeted for choosing to live differently, and that says more about others' intolerance than it does about them. Though there's a glimmer of hope that justice may finally be served, the case is far from over. That lingering uncertainty makes the entire situation feel even more painful and unresolved. Toya was so young, so vibrant, with her whole life still ahead of her, and the weight of that loss will never fully disappear. Toya had her entire future ahead of her, a life full of dreams and potential that was cruelly taken away. Her family had envisioned so much for her, but all of it was shattered in an instant. Even now, they remain unable to move forward, still frozen in grief. The trial for Rajwinder is scheduled for February 2025, and for the Cordingley family, each passing day brings them closer to the hope of closure and the beginning of healing. The thought that Toya may have lost her life at the hands of someone so volatile and unpredictable is deeply unsettling. The idea that an innocent person could cross paths with someone so dangerous, completely unaware, is chilling. This case serves as a grim reminder that danger can lurk anywhere. Troubled individuals walk among us, and we often pass by them without ever knowing the darkness they carry. The upcoming trial stands as the family's only real opportunity to uncover the truth and, hopefully, find some measure of peace after enduring years of unrelenting heartbreak. Moving on to the next case. Alexandra Morgan. Today's video unravels a chilling investigation centered around the final moments of a woman whose last known appearance was captured on camera, exposing far more than anyone anticipated. On November 14, 2021, 34-year-old Alexandra Morgan was seen on CCTV at a petrol station near Cranbrook, Kent. After that, she vanished. For days later, her family reported her missing. The investigation unearthed long-buried secrets, truths that no one ever expected to surface. The reality was more disturbing than anyone could have imagined. Known to those close to her as Alex, Alexandra Morgan was a devoted single mother to 2 children, aged 4 and 11. They lived together in Wilsley Pound, Cranbrook, Kent. Alexandra's relationships with the fathers of her children didn't last, and raising them alone was far from easy. According to some sources, she worked as a dog groomer. Friends and family described her as determined and full of energy, always striving to provide everything her children needed. She worked tirelessly to create a better life for them, taking on whatever she could to make that happen. On November 13, 2021, Alexandra arranged to meet her parents. She told them she was heading out on a spa weekend with friends and left her 2 children in their care, promising to return in 3 days. But when she failed to pick up her kids on November 17th, her parents became concerned. It was completely out of character for Alex not to respond to calls or messages. After repeated attempts to reach Alexandra failed, her parents contacted the police. Kent authorities immediately found her disappearance suspicious and began treating it as a potential criminal case. Their first step was to identify the spa Alexandra claimed she was visiting. Since she had mentioned going with friends, investigators also looked into her social circle. At that point, police had no idea how complex and dark the search for Alexandra would become. During the investigation, officers reviewed surveillance footage from a Cranbrook petrol station, the last confirmed sighting of Alexandra. Her white Mini Cooper became a crucial lead. On the morning of November 14th, she was seen filling up her car, purchasing a few items, and then driving away. Nothing in the footage seemed unusual at first. Rose McCauley, the station manager and a longtime friend of Alexandra's, said she had known her for 17 years. On the morning she vanished, Alexandra bought £10 worth of petrol, along with a coffee and a snack. "I don't think anyone really knows what happened to her or where she's gone," said Rose. The disappearance of her car added to the mystery. It hadn't been seen since. Rose and a friend even searched all over Hastings for it, but with no luck. "Alex isn't the type to run away from her problems," Rose added. "So I don't believe she'd be too afraid to come back. I just hope she hasn't been hurt somewhere. It's terrifying. I really hope she's okay and turns up soon." Rose remembered that Alexandra appeared unusually polished that Sunday. She had a full face of makeup, her hair was neatly styled, and she wore smart clothes. "She looked more put together than I've ever seen her," Rose said, "and she came in early, which wasn't like her at all." Alex was smiling and appeared to be in good spirits. As detectives began speaking with her friends, they uncovered unsettling social media posts Alexandra had made in early 2018. In one post, she claimed someone was following her and recording her every move. A year later, in 2019, she shared an image with the words, "Hi Stalker," and added a caption that read, "Lovelies, stop following me around. It's obvious you don't like me. We're not even Facebook friends." She continued, "You don't need to be looking at this, buddy, unless I say so. If you keep this up, I'll make it public for everyone to see. Now have a nice day." Investigators began exploring whether these posts could be linked to her disappearance. Alexandra cutting off contact with her family was completely out of character, which only deepened concerns. A police spokesperson announced that the case was now being treated as a potential murder as the investigation continued. Authorities urged anyone who had seen Alexandra or her white Mini Cooper with a black roof to come forward. "If you think you may have seen Alexandra or something suspicious, even if you're unsure, please contact us," they said. Alexandra was described as a slim woman, about 5 feet 6 inches tall, with shoulder-length brown hair. At the time of her disappearance, she was wearing a silver necklace, ripped blue jeans, a black top, and knee-high black boots. In many missing persons cases, the trail goes cold due to a lack of clues or evidence, but this time was different. Alexandra had unknowingly left behind a digital trail that helped investigators piece together what had happened. That trail would soon uncover some shocking truths. At the time, Alexandra had also been trying to improve her financial situation. In an effort to improve her financial situation, Alexandra began working as a sex worker, advertising her services online, a side of her life her family and friends were completely unaware of. Sex workers often face extreme vulnerability, constantly exposed to danger. Neither they nor law enforcement can predict whether the next client will be someone harmless or someone with violent intentions. Investigators discovered that Alexandra had arranged to meet a regular client shortly before she disappeared. That man was later taken into custody, and from statements made by police, it became clear they believed Alexandra was no longer alive. Detectives from the Kent and Essex Serious Crime Directorate, investigating the disappearance of a woman from Sissinghurst, arrested a man on Thursday, November 25, 2021, a Kent police spokesperson announced. A 40-year-old man from St. Leonards-on-Sea was arrested on suspicion of murder. As part of their efforts to locate Alexandra, Kent police began searching 3 locations near Hastings and Street Lennox. With assistance from Sussex Police, officers in St. Leonards-on-Sea continued their investigation, and locals were advised to expect an increased police presence in the area. The man arrested was identified as Mark Brown, a construction worker. He was married and had a son, yet his family had no idea he was leading a double life. Alex had met Brown several times before she vanished. Sussex Police revealed that at one point, he even bought her a Mini Cooper. Brown had first discovered Alexandra through an adult website, and their initial meeting took place on June 8, 2021, at her home in Sissinghurst, Kent, not far from Cranbrook. That time, everything went well, and they kept seeing each other now and then. After almost 2 weeks, they met again on June 21st. This time, Alexandra went to Littlebridge Farm near Hastings, Kent, which Brown rented for talks with women and other things. As August and September went on, they met 7 more times, and Alexandra had no idea that she was getting more and more caught in a trap. Brown texted her on October 23, 2021, and asked if she would be interested in a risk-free business deal he was giving. The offer was for £30,000 to stay in a hotel for 35 days. He was going to watch over a new ID, a straight car, and shopping money. He only asked her to get a cigarette, get some cash, and buy some stuff. The fact that Alexandra searched for things online after this proposal showed how much she wanted to make her kids' lives better, shows what kind of person she is. The search term that came up was minimum deposit for a house 2021. Several other searches showed that Alexandra planned to use the money she would make to start new businesses. People looked up things like, how much can you make running a sunbed shop in the UK? And how much tax would I pay on a pound 100,000? Alexandra lied to her parents when she said she was going to the spa with her friends. She was really going to the farm to meet Mark Brown. On November 14th, she left the house, and at 7:20 a.m., CCTV video caught her buying petrol in Cranbrook. Around 8 a.m., she got to Littlebridge Farm. The next day, on November 17th, Brown moved Alexandra's car to Holmhurst Lane in St. Leonard's. He had already changed her license plate to a fake one. Alex's mother called the cops on November 18th because her daughter had not picked up the kids and was not answering calls or texts. Police found CCTV video on November 23rd that showed Alexandra's car following Brown's Jaguar on the way to Littlebridge Farm. Kent police stopped people from getting to the farm and began questioning Brown. He agreed that he had met Alexandra, but he said she had already left after 45 minutes. He told them that they could get his DNA and fingerprints. The next day, on November 25th, Brown was arrested as the main suspect in the case of Alexandra Morgan. This is where we need to go back to before I tell you what happened to her. Alexandra didn't know Mark Brown yet. Leah was 33 years old and had 3 kids, but she did not have control of them. The horse, 3 goats, and 2 dogs. A mastiff named Duke and a Pomeranian named Lady were very important to Leah. Leah met Mark Brown on March 25th, 2018, when he contacted her through a prostitute website where she was advertising her services. After a few years, Brown would meet Alexandra Morgan on the same website. By the end of February 2018, Brown and Ware were dating and living together in a flat. After 6 months, the lease was up and she moved into Brown's yard at Littlebridge Farm and lived in a shipping container. Brown said that their friendship was like riding a roller coaster. It turned out that Leah lived a crazy life. She was getting benefits and had weekly payments deposited into her account. Brown would often take these out for her. She had used illegal drugs and had mental health problems in the past, but many people said she was working hard to get control of her kids. Leah's mom said that her daughter was really like an angel when she talked about her. Leah had never liked school, she said, but she had always liked her animals more. Brown was with Ware for 3 years before she vanished without a trace. In May 2021, Leah spent the evening of May 5th and the early hours of May 6th with Jack Tyler, a friend who had been convicted of selling drugs. There was a close bond between them because they used those drugs together that night. That was the last time anyone saw Leah. The last call she made from her phone was at 8:55 a.m. on May 7th. The cops thought she had died that day. After 2 weeks, Mark Brown went back to the website where he met Leah on June 8th, 2021. It had been a month since she had been last seen. Alex met Brown at her house for the first time. Their meeting went well, and she thought Brown was a good man. But Alexandra didn't know that Brown had been seeing another woman leave without a trace a month before. Messages sent by Brown that were very revealing were found by the detectives during the probe. And even though they were about Alexandra Morgan and his high school girlfriend, he sent them to her 5 days after meeting her. They were actually about Leah Ware. "I'm going to be very careful how I word this," they said. "Not long ago, it happened again when I was getting rid of something. It's not fun to do, an old oil drum, 5 liters of fuel, and now there's not much left. It gets really hot and almost white-colored. My heart, head, and soul are all heavy from the things I have done. An evil person with a good heart? It's a joke, really." So police began to think that Alexandra Morgan was dead, and even scarier, that she wasn't the only person Mark Brown had killed. A spokesperson for the major crime team at Sussex Police said, "Despite extensive investigations, we have not found Leah or her body. We are asking the public for help to try to find her or anything related to her disappearance." Brown was caught on November 25th, 2021, and his farm was searched by the cops. Somebody had just burned something inside that bucket, which they found. When experts looked inside, they found bones and teeth that had been broken off. After being looked at in a lab, it was clear that these were Alexandra Morgan's remains. Neil Kimber of Kent Police and Andy Wilson of Sussex Police said in a joint statement, "Our thoughts are with the families of both Alexandra and Leah at this difficult time. We have found Alexandra's body, but we still haven't found Leah. Our investigations are still going on. We want anyone who knows anything about Leah or Alexandra to get in touch with us right away." The police said Leah was a slim white woman who was 5 feet 6 inches tall and had very long black hair and blue eyes. They said she might have a dragon tattoo on her right leg, Chinese writing on her right hip, and the name Ryan with a fairy sitting on a flower on her right leg. Brown's farm was searched for about a month, finishing on January 7, 2022. The cops found the bones of a Pomeranian dog in the pond. A weight was tied to the dog's collar. Researchers thought it might have been Leah's dog, which Brown cruelly got rid of after Leah died. Even though the cops couldn't find Leah Ware's body, they still charged Brown on February 1, 2022 with killing her. At first, they charged him with killing Alexandra Morgan. When he was being questioned, Brown rejected the charges against him. But when they showed him proof that he had burned Alexandra Morgan's body, he admitted that she had died. Even so, Brown was convinced that Alexandra had died in an accident. The case against Mark Brown started on October 17, 2022. While these two cases were in court, new information about them came to light. The judges found out that Brown regularly took money out of Leah Ware's bank account after she went missing. After Leah went missing on May 7, 2021, Brown got her prescription drugs and monthly cash advances from a cash machine using her new bank card. The card was brought to the home of his sister, Cheryl. After that, he would put the money and medicine in Bertie's horse box on their property. In the weeks after Leah Ware went missing, Duncan Atkinson, the lawyer for the prosecution, talked about how Brown took £200 from her account, which was the most that could be taken in a single transaction. Leah's balance dropped from over £2,000 to £45 because of this. The jury was told that Brown took £200 out of Leah Ware's account twice in July 2021, not long after putting £200 into her account. When asked why he did it, he said, "I used her £200 and then put it back. Someone owed me £4.30 at the time, so I think they paid me back." Atkinson said, "The truth is that the money that was taken out of Leah Ware's account had everything to do with you and nothing to do with her. It seems like she died right after getting her new bank card." Brown said, "I don't know what you're getting at because as far as I'm aware, she's not dead. Were you not using Miss Ware's money?" Atkinson asked. "You knew that Leah wasn't going to get any money from where she was." "I don't know what planet you're living on," Brown said. Another friend of Leah's said this in court. She wanted Brown to leave his wife for her. It may have had something to do with Brown's choice to do this act. Brown said again that Alexandra Morgan's death was an accident during the trial about her death. He said Alexandra hit her head when she slipped and fell on a tool in the workshop he rented at Little Bridge Farm. He said he ran over to her and saw that her head was bleeding a lot, so he got a towel to try to stop the bleeding. There was even more blood when he moved her head to put the towel under it. Duncan Atkinson, the lawyer for the prosecution, spoke out against the decision. He said, "When you first saw her, she was on her back on the ground, and there was blood all around her head. So it's clear that she's hurt and needs help and a doctor. That is clearly clear." Brown told me, "Yes, but I panicked, and the first thing I did was grab a towel to stop the bleeding. That was it. She was gone. I had to try CPR right away because I couldn't find a pulse. Why did I not call an ambulance? Because my first goal was to stop the blood and then check for a pulse. Since the ambulance might not arrive on time, there's no point in calling it. The most important thing is to stop the blood." Brown was sure Alexandra Morgan had died in the 5 minutes or so after he tried CPR and held a mirror to her mouth and nose to see if she was breathing. He put on clothes to stop the blood from coming out from under the workshop door, went outside to throw up, and then called 911 on his phone, which he got from either his car or his jacket pocket. Then he decided to hide it. To stop more blood from coming out, I wrapped Alex in a sleeping bag and put a towel around her head. He said, "Someone was lying dead on the floor of my workshop. What would it look like? How could I show that she hurt herself? You did something stupid. It was the worst mistake I've ever made." After that, Brown chose to burn Alexandra's body in an incinerator he had made from an old oil drum and used often to get rid of trash. He stated, "I'd heard urban legends about people burning bodies, and I didn't want anyone to come across a body dumped somewhere. So Brown said he had nothing to do with Liaware's disappearance and thought she was still alive. He also said that Alexandra's death was an accident. The court did hear from Brown's boss, Alan Diaz, though, during the hearing. The man said Brown told him that the cops could come and arrest him. This happened on November 24th when Diaz asked what the cops could charge him with for a double murder. Brown responded. This was a very important point. Brown kind of accepted that Liaware was dead and that Alexandra Morgan did not die in an accident with this answer. But Brown said he didn't say those things. No, I said I was leaving for 25 years to life, he replied. I don't know where he got double. I only said one murder when I said double. He said, when asked who you killed, the answer should have been no one. That's not what I thought would happen, Brown said. It should have been yes. Not being able to show I didn't kill Alex made me do what I did. I didn't think anyone would believe me. Both of them died in the cruelest ways. They were moms, daughters, and many other things to their family and friends. Both of them got caught in the trap of a crazy bad guy. They hurt children and families by leaving them behind. Jurors at Hove Crown Court learned about both Liaware and Alex Morgan's lives during their murder trials. They learned about how they were raised, their children and relationships, their jobs, and the things they loved. Brown also tried to blacken their names, as the lawyer put it, by giving the jury a false picture of the women. Things that people remember most about Liaware and Alex Morgan are the times they were happy and smiled. Both should live on in the minds of those who loved them because they were great in many ways. A group of 10 men and 2 women found 41-year-old Brown guilty of all charges on December 1, 2022. Judge Nicholas Hillard said, "This is clearly a very serious case, and it must be very upsetting for the families of the victims." The judge declared that Mark Brown would serve a life sentence and that it was up to the court to decide the minimum term, or whether he would ever be eligible for parole at all. He also stated he would consider adjusting Brown's sentence if he chose to reveal what he had done with Liaware's body. Brown, however, refused to take that opportunity. Before the sentencing, the court heard a powerful victim impact statement from Rebecca Martin, Liaware's mother. She said Brown continued to torment their family by withholding the truth about Leah's fate. Mark Brown killed her to fulfill his evil desires. He controlled and manipulated every aspect of her life. And when he was finished, he discarded her like garbage. Alexandra Morgan's parents also addressed the court, describing their daughter as intelligent, full of life, and determined to succeed. Alexandra was facing challenges, but she was pushing through them. She had hopes for the future and was devoted to her 2 children, whom she loved deeply. On January 13, 2023, Mark Brown was sentenced to 2 life terms. He will not be eligible for parole for 49 years. Notably, Brown refused to attend his sentencing and was sentenced in absentia. Judge Hillard, addressing the court, stated, "No sentence I impose can truly reflect the value of the lives that were lost. There is no way to undo the harm caused by this crime. What he did clearly weighs nothing on his conscience." Moving on to the next case. Felicia McGuire. Felicia McGuire, 32, lived in Suffolk County, Massachusetts, and was last seen in February 2007 near Roxton Street in Boston's Dorchester neighborhood. She had a 10-year-old son and was dating 17-year-old David Pena. Felicia was reported missing by her mother 10 days after her disappearance. Several witnesses noted suspicious behavior by Pena in the hours and days following her vanishing. Pena told investigators that he had a physical altercation with Felicia, during which she stabbed him with scissors. He claimed he left their apartment afterward and, upon returning days later, found Felicia and her belongings gone. He believed she had traveled to Florida to be with an ex-boyfriend. Neighbors confirmed they saw Pena with a wound that night, and a few days later, they spotted Pena with a man thought to be his brother at around 4 a.m. They were struggling to carry what appeared to be a bulky rolled-up, multicolored blanket. There was one person at each end of the rolled-up blanket. The men were seen putting the rolled-up carpet and blanket into the back of a car and driving away at a high rate of speed. Police dedicated a lot of resources and spent a lot of time searching for Felicia, but her body was never found. There was also not enough evidence to charge David Pena with any crime, so the case went cold for some time. In February 2017, a search was conducted in the wooded area of West Roxbury, Massachusetts for Felicia, but nothing substantial was found. Also, in February 2017, another witness came forward to talk to investigators. He said David Pena asked him to help remove items from the apartment he and Felicia shared, including a rolled-up carpet that was difficult to carry. The witness who helped carry the rolled-up carpet said that he immediately thought that there was a body wrapped up in the carpet and blanket. Furthermore, the witness said they carried what he believed was Felicia's body into a wooded area with a parking lot in the Boston area. A witness claimed that when they went to the wooded area, they saw what they believed to be Felicia's body. On February 30th, 2023, David Pena was arrested in Florida. At the time, he was already in custody on an unrelated charge, and police also found there was an outstanding warrant for his arrest on cocaine trafficking charges. District Attorney Kevin Hayden stated that the information leading to Pena's arrest came from interviews conducted since Felicia's disappearance, with the most recent interview taking place in March 2022. Pena is currently being held in a Dorchester prison in Massachusetts and is scheduled to appear in court for a probable cause hearing in February. Family members of Felicia attended the arraignment but chose not to comment on Pena's arrest, saying, "We haven't talked in 15 years. Moving on to the next case. Heather Stilliano. In this case, we delve into the story of a young woman filled with dreams of fame and achievement. However, what she didn't realize was that her quest for stardom would lead her into a sinister web of lies and manipulation, one so dark and twisted she never saw it coming. What started as a hopeful pursuit quickly turned into a terrifying ordeal that would alter her life forever. This was the reality for Heather Stilliano when she was just 19. Her future was full of promise, until everything unraveled in November 1991. Picture this. It's early November 1991. The bustling summer crowds in Myrtle Beach have gone. The boardwalks are nearly deserted, tourists have disappeared, and the crisp scent of autumn lingers in the air. Heather Stilliano had only been living in town for a few short months. About a year earlier, Heather had moved to Myrtle Beach after finishing high school in a quiet, rural area of New Jersey. She had dreams of performing, singing under the stage lights, chasing a future in entertainment. It all felt within reach. Her mother believed in her deeply and told her she was destined for success. So, Heather rented a small apartment near the beach and took a job bussing tables at a nearby restaurant. But as time passed, something shifted. By November, her calls home became less frequent, and when they did come, her voice carried a growing sadness. She was homesick, possibly overwhelmed, and then suddenly, she stopped calling altogether. A week passed with no word from Heather. Her friends began to worry, and her mother, Sue, was terrified. In their last conversation, Heather had admitted things weren't going as she had hoped. That haunting confession kept replaying in Susan's mind like an echo she couldn't silence. That's what true friends do. They checked in on her. They went to Heather's apartment and knocked, but there was no answer. Her car was missing, yet something didn't sit right. They felt compelled to look more closely. What they discovered inside would send shockwaves through the quiet beachside town. Heather Stilliano was dead. In a single moment, all her dreams of making it big and building a new life in Myrtle Beach were gone. But the question remained, who took Heather's life and why? Let's uncover the truth. To understand what happened, we need to know who she really was. Before the darkness took hold, Heather was a small-town girl with a big heart and even bigger dreams. She wasn't just another name on a report. She was someone's daughter, someone's sister, and a young woman full of hope. Heather Stilliano was born in 1972 in Dover, New Jersey. Heather was raised on a quiet, hilly street in a tight-knit family. Her parents, Victor Stilliano and Susan Wright, showered her with love and encouragement. She had a younger brother and sister who admired her deeply. Though her childhood had its challenges, especially after her parents' separation threw her world into turmoil, Heather didn't let it break her. If anything, it made her stronger. By the time she was 17, Heather had lived in several towns across New Jersey and Pennsylvania: Roxbury, Newton Ransom, and Mount Arlington. Each move helped shape her into someone more resilient, independent, and ready to forge her own path. She spent many years at Abington Heights School in Pennsylvania, where teachers remembered her as bright and imaginative. Eventually, she completed her high school education at High Point Regional in Branchville, New Jersey. Heather graduated with honors in 1990, a clear reflection of her determination and drive. But she wasn't just chasing academic success. She had a presence that demanded attention. Her voice could hush a room, and she naturally gravitated toward the spotlight. Friends described her as the life of the party, someone who radiated joy and effortlessly drew others in with her warmth and enthusiasm. Her father, Vic, once said she was drawn to anything vibrant: music, theater, and the buzz of a lively crowd. That's what made Myrtle Beach so appealing to her, a place brimming with energy and potential. Around that time, Heather's mother, Susan, had gone through a painful breakup, and Heather stayed by her side for a year, helping her heal. They would spend long nights talking about love, life, and what lay ahead. Susan later recalled Heather saying that once that year was over, she was going to chase her dreams full force. When the moment arrived, Heather packed up her belongings, said heartfelt goodbyes to her family, and headed south, leaving behind the familiar to chase a new beginning. She wasn't running away, she was running toward a dream. Myrtle Beach had captured her imagination with its lights, shows, and promises of turning talent into a career. Though it was hard to let her go, her family supported her every step of the way. Heather stayed connected, often calling home to share updates and little moments from her new life. Susan would listen closely, filled with pride, but also the natural worries of a mother. They believed Heather was destined to shine, because to them, she had always been a star. But not everyone saw her light the same way. By the fall of 1991, Heather Stilliano had been living in Myrtle Beach for 3 months, beginning a new chapter far from the quiet hills of New Jersey and Pennsylvania. She got a job waiting tables at Shaw's Restaurant, a popular spot in the area. Her days were filled with the noise of plates clattering and guests talking. It wasn't the stage she had hoped for, but it paid the rent on her small flat by the water, one where she could hear the ocean at night and see her name lit up. She quickly made friends because, as always, her positive attitude drew people in. Things weren't as good as they seemed, though. Heather's letters and phone calls to her family showed that she was trying to get back on her feet. She would talk to her mom, Susan, about the long shifts, the salty air, and the new friends she had made at work or in town. Lately, though, those calls have had a different sound. There are hints of anger and maybe even loneliness. Just a week before, in late October or early November, she had talked to Susan and told her that the entertainment world wasn't opening up as quickly as she had thought. Susan told her to keep going and told her to come over if she needed a break. The line went dead after that call. As the days turned into weeks, Susan's worry grew. Heather didn't just disappear without saying anything. She always checked in, even if it was just to let you know she was fine. That quiet had been too long by November 11th. Heather's friends in Myrtle Beach, whom she met at Shoney's, or through her growing group of friends, also began to worry. She didn't work and didn't answer the phone when they called. Some of them chose to stop by her place. A crisp autumn day like that made the beach town feel more like a dead town than a tourist hub. It was a Monday. They pulled up to her flat, which was in a small building off the main street. Her car wasn't where it usually is. A Chevrolet that was 10 years old that she had driven down from the Northeast. That was weird on its own, but not yet enough to make me worry. They came and knocked. Nothing. Named her. Keep quiet. The door wasn't locked. It's possible that she left it that way, or maybe someone else did. They pushed it open and took a step into a room that didn't feel right. They couldn't put their finger on what was making the air smell bad. The living room was a mess. There was broken plastic all over the place, and the furniture was leaning off. Then they saw her. Heather was just lying there still on the floor of her own house. Her body was in the middle of the room, in the shade, and she had a pillow tucked under her head in a way that felt thoughtful and almost gentle. Her clothes were a mess, and her skin looked pale on the carpet. What they saw stopped them in their tracks. As they thought about what they had found, time seemed to stop. It turned out that Heather had been there for days, or about a week. Her flat, which had been her safe place, was now a crime scene stuck in the past. The things her friends touched were fine. With their hearts racing, they backed away and called the police. The cops in Myrtle Beach got there quickly. They saw signs of a fight going on inside, iron parts that were broken, a knife that was bent, and footprints that were too big for Heather. It looked like her TV, purse, and 35mm camera were all gone. The findings shocked Myrtle Beach, which is used to big crowds in the summer, but not bad news. Someone left her there. Why the pillow? Where was her car anyway? Police in Myrtle Beach knew right away when they walked into Heather Stilliano's flat that it wasn't a simple break and gone wrong. The scene was a dead giveaway. Iron parts that are broken, a knife that is bent, a TV that is missing, and that creepy fact that she had a pillow under her head. This was private, planned, and messy. As soon as the investigation began, police spread out to look for every possible lead, from people who knew Heather best to people she only knew briefly. The first people to see are those closest to Heather. Her friends from Shaw's restaurant, where she worked as a server, were scared but ready to help. They made a picture of a girl who seemed unhappy lately. At first, she was happy and smiled at customers, making them feel good. Someone at work remembered Heather talking about a guy who had been coming to the place too often, someone not like everyone else, someone with flaws. At the time, she didn't think much of it, but now it stood out. The police wrote it down because they were curious if this mysterious man had seen her outside those walls. The next person they went to was her neighbor. A lot of them hadn't seen much. Someone across the hall said she remembered hearing a big thump around November 4th, a week before Heather kept to herself. She thought it was just moving some furniture, but the time was too good to miss. But Heather's family became the emotional center of the first part of the probe. She talked to police every day on the phone about Heather's last call, in which she sounded homesick. She said Heather didn't have any bad people around. She had too much kindness and trust. Susan did talk about an ex-boyfriend, though. He was a pilot from Pope Air Force Base. Before she went to Myrtle Beach, they broke up, and Heather told her mom that he didn't like it. Could anger over her have followed her south? The police quickly found him. It turned out that he was sent to Saudi Arabia for the whole week of November 4th. The airtight excuse was crossed off the list. It was Susan who gave us another clue. Heather had been to this party a few weeks ago. She got drunk, passed out, and then told her mom she thought something bad had happened. Maybe an attack by a man there who is married to one of the guests and is an Air Force pilot. Heather was scared and even thought about telling someone about it. Did he try to hide his tracks? The police took this second pilot into custody to question him. He said he was at the party, but he didn't say anything else. His fingerprints didn't match anything in the flat, and his wife said he had been there all week. Another dead end. Meanwhile, more and more physical proof was being gathered. The broken iron bits and bent knife, along with the size 11 sneaker prints in the carpet that were too big for Heather, gave away the fact that there had been a fight. Someone strong and in need. Also, her Chevy, which was beat up and had been driven from New Jersey, was stolen. They might find out who took it if they could find it. The detectives went out and asked people in the town, "Has anyone seen Heather's car?" A petrol station worker a few blocks away thought he saw it late one night being driven by a scruffy man he didn't know. Not enough, but it was a start. As the days went by, the case was at risk of getting cold. There were no clear suspects or a car, just rumors and dead ends. Then, on November 14th, a break came from 400 meters away. She called the cops after seeing Heather's story on the news. She lives on Pawleys Island, which is 26 miles south of Myrtle Beach. A tense and pushy man had come into his shop a week before trying to sell a 35mm camera that looked just like the one that was stolen from Heather's place. The store didn't buy it. There was something not right. So as the guy drove off, he wrote down the plate number. That plate, it matched Heather's car that she stole. Yeah, it led police to Melbourne, Florida, where they had just stopped a drifter named James Bernard Whipple, 38, for speeding. He used to work in building, but became addicted to drugs. That autumn, he was in Myrtle Beach doing different jobs. Cops were told that he had left work around November 4th, which is also when Heather stopped talking to anyone. But did he know her? That was the question that the study was all about. Some of Heather's friends thought they remembered her talking about a guy who had once crashed on her couch, a friend of a friend who was having a bad time. Could Whipple have done it? The police pressed witnesses more. A regular at Asheni said he saw a dirty guy who looked like Whipple talking to Heather during a slow shift. Not flirty at all, just normal. When they were pulled over that night, it was just a normal traffic stop. The police in Melbourne saw a strange car driving around town, ran the plates, and got a hit. It was the Chevrolet that Heather Stilliano had lost. There was a quick arrest. Whipple didn't fight back or run away. He might have known the game was over. But who was this person? And why did they kill the dreams of a 19-year-old? Come on, let's take it off. There was no plan behind James Bernard Whipple's crimes. One piece at a time, he fell apart. He was born in 1953 and had lived all over the Southeast his whole life. They work as a building worker, but they also steal and use drugs for fun. 4 states were on his record: Florida, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. There are burglaries, grand thefts, unauthorized car uses, small thefts, and even a couple of DUIs with fighting arrests thrown in. He got hooked on drugs years ago, and they destroyed his wife, his family, and everything stable in his life. By 1991, he was just a ghost in Myrtle Beach doing strange jobs and sleeping anywhere he could. Friends, or at least what was left of them, said he had reached rock bottom and was eager for money to feed his drug habit. There was proof. That night in Melbourne, a glowing sign pointed right at him. The police found Heather's purse, a steak knife with serrations that still had blood on it, pieces of the broken iron from her apartment, and a size 11 pair of men's sports shoes that were covered in dried blood. His close motel room was searched, and more were found. He took her TV and 35mm camera to sell them for money to get his next fix. Whipple didn't waste time acting like he wasn't guilty. He began to talk as soon as he was taken to the Brevard County Jail. He told her that he had been in her flat on November 4th, 7 days before her friends found her. His story was that he went there to get money because he knew she was a waitress and had tip money saved up. He said that after that, things were a blur of drugs and despair. He told Heather that he met her through a friend they both had in common, Chris Harkins, who he had worked with. She might let him sleep on her couch once. She might have just known him well enough to open the door. The prosecutors thought he was lying about that thin link. She let him in after being asked if Chris was there. Things got worse once they got inside. He hit her with the iron until it broke, cut her with the knife, and used anything he could find to choke her. They later confirmed that it was a lamp cord. He then cleaned up just enough to hide his tracks, grabbed what he could, and sped off in her car. The pillow under her head was an addition that showed he knew her, even if it was just a little. The charges came down hard and fast in Myrtle Beach. Whipple was taken back from Florida and put on a long list of people wanted for extradition. Murder in the first degree, sex assault in the first degree, armed robbery, and grand theft of a motor car. Whipple has become a predator because of illegal drugs, and Heather, who was young, trusting, and by herself, was in his way. There was a lot of proof against him. He was linked to that terrible November night by bloody shoes, her stolen car, and a confession. It wasn't enough to just catch the bad guy in this case, though. It was meant to prove it beyond a reasonable question and give Heather's family some peace of mind. Over the next few years, things didn't go in a straight line towards an answer. The pleas, trials, and sentences that changed several times made it like being on a roller ride. Let's go over it. Whipple's time in court began with a plea. Soon after being caught in 1992, he pleaded guilty to first-degree murder, armed robbery, and grand theft of a motor car. There hadn't been a full hearing yet. It was more like a deal to stay alive. His lawyers pushed for life in jail so that he wouldn't have to go through the needle. Ralph Wilson, the lawyer who led the prosecution, didn't fight the plea itself. They just wanted the harshest punishment possible. They said that Whipple's acts were cruel. Heather was killed with a knife, an iron, and a lamp cord. He then broke into her house and stole money for drugs. The judge agreed with the strength of the state's case. Whipple was still given the death sentence. In 1992, even though he begged for a different sentence, it looked like the case was over for a short time. That wasn't the end, though. In 1994, Whipple's case went to a full trial with a punishment phase to decide for sure what would happen to him. The government came out swinging. They made Whipple look like a dangerous person who broke into Heather's flat by using her trust. They put a lot of weight on science. The blood on his shoes was the same color as Heather's. This knife with slits fit her cuts like a puzzle, and the size 11 prints that were stamped on her carpet made it official. The most important evidence for them was Whipple himself, who confessed. He admitted that he hit and stabbed her and then ran away with her things. The reason was simple but scary. He needs money for his next high. To get the death penalty again, they said the crime was too violent. 40 wounds and 3 deaths made it necessary. It was harder for the defense to get up. Whipple's lawyers didn't say he wasn't guilty. That was set in stone when he said he was guilty, but they begged for forgiveness. They said he wasn't a planned killer, but rather a drug addict who had lost control. They talked about how sorry he was. He told Heather's family in court, "I should get what I'm getting, and I'm sorry for all the pain I've caused." They even tried to find flaws in the state's case by asking whether the assault charge was valid. Their goal was to get rid of the factors that made the death penalty appropriate. They were fighting for his life, even though it was unlikely. The defense didn't get any sympathy from the jurors. In 1994, after hours of talking about it, they all agreed. All of them are guilty. They called for death, murder, armed robbery, and big theft. Whipple's death sentence was thrown out, which was a big win for the defense after they had questions earlier. The case went through a lot of motions, and by July 2003, a deal had been made. The lawyer for the 15th Circuit, Greg Hembury, agreed not to push for the death penalty again if Whipple gave up his right to release. It went to Whipple. Lieber Correctional Institution in South Carolina is where he is locked up for life without the chance of release. After that, he told the Myrtle Beach Sun, "I didn't want to take the chance of parole." The case eventually came to a close. It was a near miss for Whipple, who remains imprisoned for life at Lieber. There were no appeals, no chance of release on the horizon. While the death penalty remains a topic of debate in South Carolina, Whipple's case is no longer part of that conversation. For Heather's family, the pain still lingers. Susan has worked quietly to keep her daughter's memory alive, staying mostly out of the public eye. Victor, too, has remained silent since the early days. Though they've seen justice served, it doesn't feel complete. What they truly have is a sentence of their own, because Heather is gone. The spotlight can either showcase dreams or reveal dark truths no one expected. Heather Stilliano's pursuit of stardom ended in a tragedy that no one saw coming. But was it simply fate, or something far more sinister? Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed exploring these intriguing cold cases with me. If you found the video fascinating, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to Cold Case Mystique for more deep dives into cold case investigations. Your support helps me bring you more compelling content. Leave a comment below with your thoughts or any cases you'd like me to cover next. See you in the next video, and remember, the search for truth never stops.